Which leads us to the man of the hour, Mr. King Boy, King Viserys
Are we
himself.
are we doing anyone else who isn't listed here before we do him?
Yeah, I want to do
Like,
I want to do Aemond
Rhaenys.
and Lucerys after him, and Rhaenys. Yeah, we can do them three after him.
Okay, our little epilogue, sort of.
Sort of, yeah, because he's the big boy. He's the reason to see this show, I would say. As much as I had a lot to compliment about everyone else, his story is complete. It is incredibly meaningful. It is performed almost perfectly. I don't understand how he could have really done any better. They put so much work into making sure you understand the entire journey from start to finish. This man, is it fucking potent? And there's so much work that goes into it. Where to begin? Who is Viserys as a person? I think most people just summarize it as he's a good man.
He's just a goofy little guy.
That's how he comes off at first. He's just this affable, kind of easily swayed, maybe, but he's just this cool guy. He's a chill king who just wants things to remain chill.
He inherited a notoriously peaceful kingdom and has had that weight on his shoulders the whole time in terms of, like, I wouldn't want to make it so that it stops being peaceful, but simultaneously I don't want to be forgotten. I want to be a king that made a difference. I want to be a king that mattered.
That's the strongest part of the character in my eyes, is how you can really feel the weight of his place in history on his shoulders in everything he says, everything he does, the way he carries himself in every scene. He's really, really concerned with what he will be and what he will do for the future with his Aegon's dream and all of that as well.
And he is very obsessed and fully believes in the scariness of the North is coming. The long winter, the Song of Ice and Fire is 100% going to happen, and he needs to facilitate it. And then you combo that with a vision he had of putting his own son, named Aegon, on the throne after him. Like, he needs to make that happen. A lot of his decisions are based on believing that that's something he has to facilitate. And so he almost feels like a failure when he's not getting the heirs he needs. And then that in turn leads to Emma dying, and he feels nothing but pain and regret for the rest of his life over that, because he loves her more than anyone. Yeah, it's keeps looking at that ring.
Paddy
and that's what
Considine has said that, like, that's when he considers Viserys to have died. Like, everything else after that point, Viserys is just like a husk. He's not even really there.
I think that makes sense, especially with the last set of lines he's getting when he's super old. Like I said, he remembers Rhaenyra being his only child. He talks to Emma. That was where he was enjoying life. Everything else was done politically and for the sake of maintaining peace. Which, oh god, when he's being lifted up from the table because he's getting too much pain again. Actually, we'll get to that in a second. The first thing I'd want to say is in the throne room when he's lifted up because he's in pain. And Alicent's holding him, says, like, you need to take it back to your room. He says, no, I have to set things right. Like, he understands as well as I think the audience does, especially in retrospect. He was like the only thing keeping everything together. As soon as he's gone, it all falls apart. Which is really interesting to contrast with not only everyone in universe's perspective of his rule, but everyone out of universe. Everybody on fucking Twitter and discussing this is like, he's one of the worst kings ever. I was just like, I don't know, man.
Fuck?
It's
What?
You have everyone saying he's ineffective, he doesn't make decisions fast enough, he always, like, wonders what the hell he's supposed to do, he lets people who are evil, like, have lots of power. He's, like, one of the worst kings ever. And I was just like, I don't know like, look at all these characters. Who exactly is the superior person to be king than him right now? Maybe Lionel? That's probably, like, it. But,
Lord Beesbury.
Yes.
Lord King Beesbury.
Chadsbury. Put him in charge. The thing is, I actually think if you really pay attention to everything he does and says in all these different episodes, there's so much more going on in his brain than a lot of people realize. Like, on the surface, right, you have Daemon saying it was never a strong suit being king. You have like Otto saying that I think it was Otto's brother or something. He's like, I think it was Otto who said you have to guide Viserys toward reason because he's never going to find it on his own. Which is just like, damn, okay. You have when they're gossiping in, like, episode 3, they say that the crown is at war and your father refuses to admit it. Everyone has, like, cynical views of why certain things are decided, but, like, Viserys is aware of all of these things. He doesn't, like, there's reasons why he makes the decisions he does, and he's on the way that he constructs his, like, advisory council. It wasn't it wasn't like cringe and corrupted before he lost influence over it. Like it was obviously stacked by Otto eventually, but at first, like him switching Otto out for Lionel was an incredibly good decision.
The idea that
Rhaenyra told
Viserys
him
is a
to.
hapless king is absurd.
Yeah, he's way
It's
more
clear
active than
that
people realized.
He knew what was the fact that everything even stayed together and hung together, considering like, because I mean, we talked about it earlier when he was like, oh, you know, I don't feel like I've been tested. He was tested. He was very much tested. He didn't have an easy go of it at all. Like, he had a lot of difficult situations he had to maneuver through. And the reality is that when it came to him, he maneuvered through those situations as best he could in accordance with the things that he valued. And that makes him a bad king, you know? I know he was a good king. Like, he's a good, you know, he honor. Like, he had honor.
And he kept
But
the fact he held things together for that long, and you know, like to the point where you know he's a good king when you're like fearful for when he dies.
Yeah, because you know that everything's going to fall apart more than likely. And
Well, do you feel the same way about Robert? Because things immediately fell apart when he died. Oh, sorry, I'm going back to the.
I don't
House of
actually.
Dragons show.
I actually think it's worth talking about, but maybe not in this stream. But just I actually think it is worth saying that Robert wasn't as. I think when you're in peace times, it's kind of like the thing of when you don't have real problems, your lesser problems become significant, and it's like Robert could be so much better if he did this. He's terrible. It's like I don't think you realize the scale we're dealing with here. Like terrible kings, I don't think you understand. Like Robert is not a terrible king. He's fine. To the point where Robert didn't care to make important decisions. So if it's really down to the council he surrounds himself with, and unfortunately his was filled with like corrupt assholes who are all trying to It's meanwhile someone like I mean that's what they were trying to go for in this in season 8 finale, right? That all the right people are in the council at that point, and that Bran is a king. But take the idea, not the actual. I know. Take the idea, not the example. But you have like the best king may be someone. It could have been like a Tommen, but he's got all of these like advisors who are actually good-willed and integrity-driven people. And yeah, it's always going to be a complicated balancing act, but. Even Robert, when he's like, go and assassinate Daenerys, everyone looks back at that after season 8 as like, so he was right, and everything would have been fine if he had done that.
Yeah.
You know, and Ned is like, what a horrible decision.
Ned was
like,
in the wrong there. That's funny.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we didn't know what was going to happen, okay? So, in retrospect. But yeah, even in the first episode, some of the first lines, Viserys is like, my son will be born and the whole realm is going to celebrate. And then the Maester is like, we have no way of predicting the sex of the child. And then Viserys says, of course, and no Maester is capable of rendering an opinion free of conditions, now are they? Like, that's him admitting immediately that he already knows that, like, there's a bunch of shit going on with the perspectives people provide.
Yeah, he's so witty and tactful and aware.
But people often claim he's not, and that's the thing. It's like if you listen to what he says and what he does, it's pretty clear. And someone I noticed on the rewatch, I mentioned this to Fringy yesterday. It's kind of neat to hear him say, but you have the Baratheon guy say, you know, can I have the favor of the queen who never was, the Rhaenys? And Otto is like, you know, you could have his tongue out for that. And then Viserys says, tongues aren't going to change the succession. Let them wag. Which is like, man, you're going to change your mind on that one as soon as we go a little further. And I think it's because of the fact that wagging your tongue about that succession really doesn't change anything, but it will if you do it enough about Rhaenyra's children.
Mm-hmm.
See, I was keeping track of the times he actually did threaten to have people's tongues out, and it basically is always concerning Rhaenyra's succession. Like, the first time he actually threatens to have someone's tongue out is when he has Daemon on the floor of the throne room after he's been accused of fuckling Rhaenyra.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about his love for Rhaenyra, and you know, I guess from a more cynical point of view, you could say it's like the security of his succession.
Doesn't he? Wait, I think doesn't he threaten him in episode 1? Daemon's.
Oh yeah.
I think he says
but
like
it's a similar idea.
You'll refer to me as your grace, or I'll have my men cut your tongue out. I think he says.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So it's actually probably more to do with Emma then, because that was in response to Daemon saying the heir for a day thing about his son.
That really triggered him, which is fair enough, I think. but yeah, you're right. Like,
triggering the lips.
he's very protective of those sorts of. He's like a super peacekeeper, but the second there's like a threat to his immediate family, he gets incredibly aggressive.
Yeah, that's
Well, the part of
line.
his family he cares about.
Yeah. Like when the Lannister says, you know, Rhaenyra's obviously not going to be queen, it's going to be your firstborn. Then he's like what are you know, like, why would I change my heir? And then he implies that like some bannermen have talked about it, and then he immediately is like, it's your sworn duty to report rebellion in my kingdom. And he's just like, whoa. We were just having a chill with no rebellion, no. I was because like he misunderstood how like Viserys won't entertain it being commonly understood that something like that would happen. That's what I mean. That he's not spineless in any way, shape, or form. He's got an idea of how to maintain peace, and if anyone steps out of that, he'll annihilate them. And that's tested with Vaemond, and he comes through immediately. It's not like he punished Daemon for chopping his head off, did he? He was, yep, there we go. That's what you get.
Oh, well, that's sorted out. That's fixed the problem.
And yeah, the how he fires Otto, I think, is one of the bigger examples of how much he's aware where people maybe not have realized. And I quite love that whole sequence because it's him putting together a lot of what he probably should have thought about before, right? He opens with saying 5 days. You're like, huh? He says his dad was hand of the king, and then he was like at peak of his health, and then 5 days later he died of a burst belly, meaning poison, right?
I think that's the implication.
That's the implication. We never find out.
And he says like, yeah, I think Otto says, I recall it all too well. It was a grim day. And he says, it was a good day for you. You were made hand. You went from being just a man in like the room to being the second most powerful man in the entire kingdom. And he says Alicent was a calculated distraction. I only now realize how calculated it was. And so, yeah, him putting together that Alicent was obviously moved in place to benefit Otto, and then Otto fucking with Rhaenyra in order to move his blood into the alignment, makes it like convinces Viserys that he's always going to put himself before his king, and then he's like, oh shit, did you kill my dad? Like, and as soon as that's even a thought, it's like Otto's done.
Yep.
And that's why it's so well put together that the reason he comes back is because Lionel dies, and at this point Alicent is in more control of you know, the dealings than Viserys is. So Otto is hand again.
The implication there is even bigger because Balon dying, Viserys' dad dying, that's what sparks the succession crisis we see at the very beginning of the show, right, where Rhaenys is spurned. So that's like saying that Otto is responsible for 2 separate succession crises. Well,
you know, is there any more information to believe that Otto actually did have a hand in the death of Viserys' father? Is there any reason to believe it beyond the accusation?
Well, yeah, it's basically just what Viserys says, and that's it.
Because that's the trouble with the Game of Thrones universe, is sometimes it makes so much sense for a person to have done a thing. It's like, look how much you benefit. It's like, it turns out they had nothing to do with it. Yeah, and there's zero proof.
Like when Ned thinks that Cersei killed Jon Arryn, right?
Yeah.
Like, it makes complete sense, and she didn't do it. Yeah.
Sometimes you just get a break.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing George does that could be frustrating or good, depending on how you like it. Maybe we'll get an answer later. But I think it's very likely he was killed, but not by Otto.
Ooh.
I don't think it's Otto. Oh, there's a Grand Maester conspiracy.
Yeah, okay, Maesters. Yeah, fair enough.
And Maester conspiracy.
Yeah, that's worth mentioning. Is like
killed.
The earlier episodes, the Grand Maester is so clearly in line with Otto. They're totally like besties.
Yep. Well, they're high towers. They're
well,
right
yeah,
there.
That's the thing. You start to connect the voice of Old Town is the high towers who are next to the Grand Maester. Well, all the Maester. Yeah. Yeah. So should we talk about that scene then? I think we should talk about that scene. Sure. Basically, Viserys is worn down to almost being a skeleton man, and he's hanging on for dear life. He's on all kinds of painkillers, and Otto and Alicent have basically taken over everything. And the Driftmark succession is coming up, and the problem with it is Vaemond is going to be very passionately pointing out that he deserves to inherit Driftmark, but the problem is if he does, it delegitimizes the kids and thus delegitimizes like Rhaenyra's whole line. And so if that basically it's this big old knock-on effect, and it's just a clever way to drive a thorn into the side of a lot of the concerns people have over this succession. And before the day happens, the implication, of course, is that Otto and Alicent will be deciding, and we already know exactly what they want, so it's all for show, really. But Rhaenyra pleads to Viserys the night before. He understands more of what's going on than I think people realize at that point as well. They think he's kind of out of his mind, but he's picking up all of it. And the next morning, I think he refuses Milk of the Poppy. And as the proceedings are proceeding, he makes his way into the throne room and walks from one side of it to the other. And it's considered the best moment of the whole series by basically everybody who's seen it.
Yep, it's my
What a
it is my
payoff.
top tier moment. It
A
is
man walking across a room.
that's what good writing does. A guy walking across a room to sit in a chair
man.
is the crowning moment of
I-
a whole series of television.
I know they did some really cool battles and the dragons were whooping around and stuff. But did you see that guy walk across a
Yeah,
room?
dude, he walked like all the
He
way across
walked
the
like
room.
from one side to the other.
Yo,
was
and he's got a
incredible.
cane.
When he went up those stairs too.
Oh, I
Yeah.
lost my fucking mind when he got to the stairs.
One guy.
I
and
actually
then
did though. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not even joking.
The media doesn't make me cry much. This did. Like
It's pretty powerful, and
incredible.
it's a representation of strength that you basically never see in media. It's a very rare form. He came through for his family in a way that is so incredibly important and difficult for him, and represents everything that his character is built toward. He's and you get the reactions from everyone. Otto has a level of like fear, as well as just being like, "Well, we're fucked because this is happening now." Alicent is like surprised, but also looking kind of distraught. Like, what does this even mean? Daemon and Rhaenyra, like, they're all going to be impressed. Rhaenys is one of the interesting ones, even though I don't like it. Being like, he's like looking down and concerned in the sense of, I think the takeaway from that is, good God, look what being the monarch did. Look what, like how much his life is just a disaster and it's horrors. Like, I wonder what would have happened if I really
Yeah,
was
maybe
Mad Queen.
Rhaenys is thinking about what that would have done to her if she
That's what
were
I'm
the
saying.
queen.
It's
Yeah.
It's-
I wonder if she's starting to think about what's going on here with Alicent and Otto as well. There's some realization there.
Yeah,
of her
'cause
decision
there's-
she makes after that.
a real public showing of the state of Viserys, which is probably kept away from most people. Even I think in episode 1, when the wound on the back of Viserys happens, Otto says no one is to know about this. Like, so yeah, they're gonna want to keep it as secret as possible because it's the whole thing of like, if you keep the image of him in power and in charge, but make all the decisions on his behalf, then you have complete control essentially. Yeah, and he gets to the steps, drops the crown, and Daemon picks it up for him, and then he basically just lays everything out as straightforward as possible. They're legitimate, move the fuck on.
He's
Done.
like, "Hey, I thought we worked this out.
Yeah,
Why are we
well,
here to discuss a settled succession."
that was almost a
Yeah, well-
surprise to me, was that he said something I didn't even necessarily think about. He was like, the only person who would have insight into this, more so than what we already had, would be Rhaenys. Because she's like going to have the most up-to-date information of Corlys. And what's cool is all the other characters saw her as a sort of, she's a wild card, but she's not in control of anything. And then she's given full control, essentially.
Yeah, that's cool.
And yeah, she sides with the blacks and takes the offer of marrying the two sons, which is interesting because in that moment, that offer was really great, and it helps them get that going. But then later on with Boris Baratheon, they can't offer anything in terms
Yeah.
of marriage. Because
I'm
of
not
that.
entirely sure why you would marry both of your daughters.
I assumed that was
to both of her
overcompensation.
sons. Yeah.
Just being like,
Yeah.
because Rhaenyra is desperate in that scene. She's like, it's trying to sweeten the pot. Like both of
And I
them.
guess, people die, and
Yeah.
it's nice to have a backup.
Well, hey, especially after what happened to Later and Lador.
Yeah.
Don't worry, if one
Mhm.
of your beloved grandchildren die, you'll have another one that's still there.
Although it's a little weird to continue tying your family members to the same people who led to the deaths of your previous family members.
Oh, well, isn't that why Rhaenyra refuses at first? She's like, I know you had something significant to do with Laenor's death. She's just like,
Yeah.
la 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 la. But then, yeah, Rhaenys makes the decision of like, well, I got to throw my lot in with one of you fuckers.
Yeah,
it's so-
and she's not gonna get much out of because like Otto's already hitched his wagon to Vaymond, so that's not gonna work out for Rhaenys.
Phenomenal scene, really tragic and uplifting all at the same time, and then it's followed up with the scene they have like a whole meal, and it's again just a banger. Viserys, and I should say Paddy Considine, expressing this desperation while showing that he's absolutely at his wit's end. He even comments on how I'm not going to walk among you for much longer, but I'm begging you. He says, not even for the crown, but for this old man, please stop
Who loves you
fighting.
all so dearly.
So good. And it's this is the thing, this episode 8 for you, it's just everything's excellent in episode 8. Even when Daemon chops off Vaemon's head and says he can keep his tongue, that shit was fire as well.
Towards the end, when he's about to get carried out of the dinner scene, when it goes quiet and he's just looking around at everyone having a good time and sharing some companionship once.
Yeah, and you
Little
can
smile
cherish
he
the
gives.
fact that I don't care if everyone dies, he got to die thinking that they'll be okay, and that's
He
all that
pulled
matters.
through for a second
Yeah.
before the corruption that everyone had so ruined it through.
Yeah, and
Daemon.
it's done really well too, because what makes it all fall apart again? It's like it's the kids. Why is that happening? Because of the fucking parents.
Because they have been raised on this idea of those guys over there, if you don't beat them, they're going to kill you.
And meanwhile, the parents are finally sorting it out, kind of. Like, this is at the end of episode 8, you have Rhaenyra and Alicent have kind of managed to mend it. But the thing is, their kids will never. And you have...
Yeah, they poisoned their kids for a decade.
Snowball has
So-
tumbled too far.
Kind of a problem. Yeah.
Well, and yeah, it's just excellent, right? They put the pig down, and Lucerys laughs. And so then Aemond says his speech, which is just fucking great as well. The handsome, wise, and strong thing. He does
Yeah,
it much
I love
clever,
him so much.
much more
He's
clever
so
than
good.
Vaymond. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then he's taken to his room, and you just get this, like, I was about to say extended scene, but I don't know, it lasts as long as it should, I think, of him just in absolute agony, like labored breathing, struggling to. They even show like a tear coming out of, you know, and it's just he's ruined, and
With every motion and noise and just the design of his decrepit form, they really, really earn just his position in life, and even just every step he takes as he walks to the throne. Like, you can see the sheer lurching effort in it.
yeah, and he dies, and they don't even like. It's not even explicit in terms of his death. You pick it up. You understand what's happening, especially
Yeah.
when he says no more. Yeah, you feel nothing but fucking bad for him. Poor guy. He's lasted so much longer than was even expected. Because it's
Yeah, I
episode.
thought he would die in the time jump. I was like, oh, he's still here. All right.
Yeah,
I
because
was
he
totally
collapses
expecting
at
him to
the
be
end of
dead.
episode 5. A lot of people expected that to be him dead.
Yeah.
It was funny watching people go, he's still alive? Yes, he
Yeah.
is.
Well, as was said, the 10-year time jump. When you see him and his hair's all gone, he's lost an arm. You're like, oh god, oh jeez, how you doing there, bud? You still walking? That's something. Yeah, like it's the whatever this stuff is crawling up his face. You can see it in like episode 7, and then episode 8, it's taken his eye and reduced like a lot of his skin down to the. It's not great, but yes, I got nothing but praise for the performance and the writing, and he alone is worth seeing the story unfold. The series binds a lot of this story together. It feels like it's his story, and from what I gather, this is a dramatic improvement on the book.
Oh yeah, he's barely a character in the book.
Yeah. That's where
Same with Alicent, I would say.
Yes. Alicent, Viserys. I mean, Damon's pretty fleshed out, but Matt Damon Targaryen was
Most of
able
the
to.
characters are a vast improvement. Yeah.
And what the show did was allowed the actors, to kind of build their own character. They
You can't imagine him as anyone else now. It's like Lord of the Rings casting. It's just
right. So
Yeah.
this is what happens in a professional production when you hire actors who are capable enough to come in and familiarize themselves with the source material, so much so that they can make creative decisions with a character that are in line with the book, to the point where the author of the book says, wow, you did better than I did. Which is what George said to Viserys. And that's something we've missed for so long, dude. I mean, like, I still don't know if House of the Dragon's the greatest show ever made, but like, compared to everything it's in right now, it just stands out like a sore thumb. And the fact that it came out, we said this a million times, along with Rings of Power, it was perfect. It was the universe unfolding. It's like, here you go. Here's something really bad and here's something really good at the same time.
Yeah, and there's so much to compare. Because high budget fantasy, they both want to leverage histories that they're a part of, even in a meta sense. And it's just like, and look at the results, the absolute difference. And I also like that House of Dragon started and ended around it, almost like it ate Rings of Power.
I am extremely glad. We spent how many EFAPs on Rings of Power? Like 4?
4 or 5, actually. Yeah,
4 or 5. I can't tell. It's all a blur of awful. And all we could to watch Rings of Power and to watch this, it's just I don't even know how to describe it. The difference is vast. These are just in 2 entirely different levels of quality. They're not anywhere close to each other. Rings of Power is shit. And House of the Dragon is highly, highly, highly recommend it.
Best part of the story is Ryan Kendall and Miguel Sapochnik were supposed to do a Conan show for Amazon, and which would have been fucking awesome. And they were canned by the woman who took over the rights.
Can you remind me, who are those 2 people?
Who made this?
They made
House of the
Dragon showrunners.
Yeah, they're the showrunners for House of the Dragon, and Jennifer Salke sent them packing because Conan was too masculine. So they decided to, and I'm sure this is purely a coincidence, be handpicked by George to do a fantasy series that just so happened to come out at the same time as theirs did. But I'm sure it was a pure coincidence.
That's the thing. I kind of refuse to believe that all of that, like the timing on all of it, even down to the having 2 episodes out before Rings of Power starts up, and then having their finale come after Rings of Power, that feels deliberate as well.
When you invest so much into a show, both Amazon and it's HBO who's doing this show still. They're still doing.
Yep.
You do wonder behind the scenes, like how much each side was sweating in terms of, the other show, because before it's out, you might have an idea of quality and viewership, but there's always there's always that element of being surprised.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, this show is still being watched, right? But Rings of Power has fallen off completely.
Yeah.
If we go by just people talking about it.
No, I'm talking about like Nielsen ratings.
Okay. I've heard that the Rings. I've heard that the House of the Dragon viewership just kept going and going and going. People kept jumping
every
on.
Episode was an increase on the last one.
It had like that Top Gun Maverick effect kind of going, where everyone liked it and they told everyone to jump on the train and watch it.
Well, if they keep this up, it'll be able to reach certain heights that they probably want. I don't think it'll be very difficult for them.
I want to recapture after all the damage that was done.
Yeah, that's a shadow that forever floats around them. If House of the Dragon has a horrible ending, people are gonna be fucking pissed. Like, you did it again.
The ending is already written.
Yeah, but even let's be honest though, you could still fuck it up.
Execution is everything.
They can still fuck it up, but I think it'll be a lot easier for them to not.
Right.
The question is,
yeah.
Will you like the ending? That's the question.
We'll see.
We'll see. I think they're smart enough to know that.
Then, like, will the ending be at all competent? Which I think it has a much higher chance of being.
Yes,
we're still gonna find things to disagree about, though.
I guess the question us book readers will still have is, where do they end it? Because it just kind of meanders on.
That's a conversation for us to have in private.
Yes.
When it comes to Rings of Power and House of the Dragon, I'm extremely interested to see their second seasons, but for 2 completely different reasons. I'm very interested to see the next season of House of the Dragon because it's excellently written and there's a lot of awesome characters, and I'm genuinely invested and curious to see what they'll do with the story and the cast that they've put together. with Rings of Power, I'm extremely curious to see what happens more of on a meta side. This element of do they change their strategy completely? Do they, what is their plan? Because you have to be concerned based on its reception and the fact that your primary competitor is beloved, which is a contrast to your own show. I mean, the reality of those two things, you can deny it on social media and you could parade around as much as you'd like, but they know the truth at Amazon. They put too much money into this to ignore, the reality of it. So that's what good and bad quality sort of produces when it comes to interest in what happens next.
Swear to God, if Rings of Power Season 2 and House of Dragon Season 2 happen at the same time again, like it'll kill Rings of Power at that point.
They wouldn't do it.
So
They'd have to be crazy.
I think House of the Dragon beats Rings of Power to Season 2.
I mean,
in terms of getting it out speed-wise,
like production, both of
yeah,
I think because both of them are big productions, but it's more so a matter of with House of the Dragon, they probably know where they're going. There's gotta be like a course correction happening with Rings of Power, right? There has to be.
I would imagine there is.
You can't spend that much money and get such a lukewarm response and then continue with that. There's no way. There's no way.
I mean, that in a vacuum, not even
$100 million. Like,
well, correct me if I'm wrong though.
It's already nobody's talking about it.
Rings of Power they've started filming that. Have they started filming for House of Dragon yet?
I'm not sure actually. Oh, you're right. I think you're right. Like Rings of Power
they're still writing, but they're going to film pretty soon. And they have a lot of people who worked on Game of Thrones who turned this stuff around in like a year.
Yeah, I was going to say I think they are more prepared to turn it over. And my God, I imagine these actors know their characters. So,
but you guys are right. They're retooling things with Rings of Power. Just real quick, sorry, it's House of Dragon.
No, it's a fair comparison.
They are absolutely shedding themselves. And they're retooling things, and that's going to add 6 months, 8 months, maybe a year to their production.
I still don't believe we'd see significant change until Season 3, because Season 2 is going to have residue, significant residue.
It's got Season 1 residue on it.
You can see dirty.
How much
we're gonna write it down before we can watch it.
Right, they started shooting in October, the beginning of October. So they're already like 2 months into filming. There's only so much that you can change while your production is locked in with like actors and locations and stuff. So
now they know how badly it went. They're probably already planning for Season 3 to change it up quite a bit, and then Season 2 will do badly as well. It'll be shit. And then they'll be like,
how could they not have seen? How could they not have seen that like what they had was just not that like I don't get it.
My theory that I have is that the people who are actually creating, writing, and making the show, they have their own idea of what a good show is. And the information that gets passed from them to the executives is not going to be what reality is. They're going to say, we're doing all of this. We got this cast together. It's very diverse. We got these writers who they're great. I mean, everyone on set's having such a good time. We spent all this money in it. The guys in the CGI dungeon are working their hearts off. We're doing all this stuff, and we got the music in it. And so they give this version of the show. Yeah, exactly. And so they tell that to the executives who aren't actually creating the show, making the show, being on set, and supervising this project closely. And they go, "Oh, excellent! Glad to hear it. Things seem to be going really, really well." They keep writing the checks, and then it comes out.
How much of it was the fact that they thought it was a sure thing, only to realize, no, it's not.
To an extent as well. The people who
I think that comes into it, yeah.
People who have all of the money, I could see those kinds of people not actually being as invested in storytelling at all, to the point where they could watch, for example, House of Dragon Season 1 and Game of Thrones Season 8 and be like, yeah, so which is the bad one? Be like, damn. Good. Because they were like, this is all the same shit. Dragons, people
there has
doing the
been
backstabbing.
Like a resurgence of Season 8 Apologia.
Gross.
Stop.
Yeah, gross.
Stop it. There's no need. We all know. We know what happened. We accept it. We're moving on.
Hello, you just listened to a segment of the podcast Every Frame a Pause, or EFAP. Hosted by YouTubers Mauler, Rags, and Fringy, and joined by a cycling variety of guests across the internet, they critically analyze media with exhaustive detail while pausing at every single frame. Subscribe to the EFAP channel and catch new episodes on Saturdays, as well as catch their smaller videos reacting to the latest and not-so-greatest movies and TV shows throughout the week. You can also subscribe here to EFAP Highlights for the latest shorts, clips, and supercuts, also uploaded throughout the week. Links to all the relevant channels can be found in the description section below, as well as links to their communities on Reddit and Discord. Thanks for watching.